pay TV operators, it's largely a defensive play to prevent, you know, the growth of OTT giants, Netflix being the obvious
and offered
example.
free to the customer at the moment, generally speaking.
Right, yeah. I mean, it tends to, I mean, there are some good examples, I suppose, now where OTT has finally been a sort of positive revenue generator for pay TV operators, like Comcast, which, with their recent sort of addition of sell-through, you know, their ARPU has radically increased all of a sudden. But in most cases, yes, it's been a defensive cost. I mean, I think it's very hard to see how quickly things will play out, but from my point of view, you can see from Netflix and YouTube how OTT services have started to take a big slice out of the industry as a whole, particularly around movies and VOD. But I think, you know, a similar thing will happen with broadcasters and OTT services that are just specializing more in linear broadcast or TV, where they will gradually gain enough strength to really be able to compete for content licenses for live, and that will over time start to erode, you know, the strength of the pay TV operators, and OTT will, you know, bit by bit will start to win through.
George, how do you see that sort of balance of power, if you like?
I see that IT industry in general, and especially internet industry, is developing at much higher speeds than all other industries, including digital industries, and so that's becoming bandwagon. It's well known, which moves with a much faster speed, and everything connected to this will, of course, benefit and leverage from this. And so I'm saying this because I see that all the TV delivery will go IP, and now I think all agrees with this, and Comcast is going IP, and so all TV delivery will be through internet, and that will have impact on this, that more and more it will be like so physical cords of service providers, infrastructure providers will not account in who is subscriber paying to, and so we will get some new big like Netflix, but with TV, with interactivity, with everything, not just movie watching, not just VOD. So we will get some big standalone OTT TV service providers. So I think this is the future.
I think it's a continual debate within our industry. I actually see, from my own view, as its additional value. So I think people are consuming more content, as George says, in extremely different ways, how and when, and very targeted content. I think for the operators, particularly, we're starting to see some of them really not just take it as a defensive mechanism, but as an actual competitive differentiator. So you look at the Comcast of the world, the Skys of the world. What Sky have done with Now TV is really impressive. And I think they'd admit that it kind of was an experiment, but it's definitely not an experiment now. It's a great way of reselling their own content to a completely different customer that would never had a Sky subscription. I think the other thing about standalone OTT, even people like Netflix or Amazon, is that it actually is quite a targeted medium. You know, most people who have those services watch it for the box sets and the movies. They're watching their TV often for different reasons. And we're starting to see more of these specialized providers come out. I used to live in America, I like baseball. I now have the MLB OTT service on my Apple TV. Can't get that on my operator. It doesn't really detract from what I'm watching for my operator. I'm now paying and watching for that. You can sort of see a world where there may be more OTT challengers, as you put it, but they'll could become specialized. It's quite expensive to set up these services, so you've got to have the audience, but you could be the world best crocheting channel that's an app on an Apple TV, and if the market's big enough and people pay, then it will make perfect sense.
Do you see it that way? That I mean, I know it's difficult for vendors who, to some extent, don't care whether it's an ISP or it's an OTT provider or it's a pay TV provider that they're doing the OTT service for. But I mean, do you see it as that kind of blended market as it develops?
No, absolutely. I think it will be a blended market. I mean, what we do see is pay TV operators, existing ones, especially broadcasters, do have a number of strengths that the new entrants don't have. In particular, they have very strong live content rights, and also they have local content. I mean, I think local content is one of the big things everyone ignores. So, for example, our sister company, MultiChoice, they make tons of local African content. Nobody else is making, I mean, they make it. No one else is going to get that content, yet it drives a large chunk of their audience, because actually people do like local content. Now, they also want Game of Thrones and the other things, which they might have to compete with Netflix for, but they do have an anchoring set of content. And the other thing I'd say is, on the IP side, I think we shouldn't write off broadcast yet, especially in a hybrid mode. So, I mean, I can see, for the next 10 years, happily having a box under your TV, maybe a web browser connected to the internet, but it's probably also got a satellite signal plugged in it, because actually satellite is still, especially if you've already got one, a very cheap way of delivering live events. I mean, doing large-scale live events over IP is expensive.
And particularly if you want to do it in 4K.
Yeah, especially as you get to bigger bandwidths. Also, there's all kinds of other, if your internet's a bit dodgy, you can happily do a combination service whereby the live channels come over broadcast and you're doing on-demand over IP, because on-demand you can get away with less bandwidth because you can pre-cache and do all kinds of other tricks. So I think the pay TV operators the existing broadcasters do have a number of strengths, but then the new entrants also have strengths. They are coming from an internet background. A lot of this stuff we've talked about, using data, for people who've worked on the web, is second nature. Anyone who's built an e-commerce site in the last 10 years has been doing this data feedback stuff as part of their day-to-day life, whereas the broadcasters haven't been. So again, there's different sides. So I think we're going to see a mixed market. In some areas, Netflix will succeed awesomely, and in other areas, we'll see pay TV operators actually, getting the grip on this and becoming really strong.